Well, this is quite exciting, so before I say anything, let's all give a round of applause for Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted, who's with us this afternoon. So thank you very much. I'm going to take just 1 minute because I know that the Lieutenant Governor is short on time, but we really appreciate him making the stop here today. And when I talked this morning, I talked about why are we here, the reasons that we're here, and we're all here because we're very vested in this topic, but we're also here because of the Lieutenant Governor's leadership. And I know he was meeting with several mayors in this room, and I think the Alliance, and it was either later that day or the next day, I got a call from the Lieutenant Governor saying I was with a group of mayors and they want to talk about Ohio EPA, and my first reaction is, oh no, oh boy, here we go. But he said they have an important issue related to integrated planning. And I thought, we know this issue. We know how important it is. And his next question to me was, what can we do to help? So really, it's a privilege for me to be part of the leadership team that really not only encourages, but has the expectation that as a cabinet director, we are responsible for working in collaboration and partnership with our fellow directors, but with our external partners who are very important as well in our community. So I'm very honored to have the opportunity to introduce the Lieutenant Governor, to open up the floor to him. I think, our approach here is going to be just to seek your feedback and your input on what worked well today. I think Mayor Berger is going to help us facilitate the last leg of our discussion. But with that, I want to thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us.
Thank you, Lori. And look, it was pretty easy. We were sitting there with a group of mayors who said, you can solve all the problems in the world, but this is a big one for us. And Mayor Berger was the leader of that conversation. And Governor DeWine and I try to pride ourselves on being good listeners and being responsive and providing good customer service to our constituents. And mayors are very important constituents because they serve the same people. All of Ohioans out there who are trying to live in a better place, a more prosperous place, an environmentally friendly place, and improve the quality of life for all. And so I appreciate the fact that the Mayor's Alliance and the Ohio EPA, US EPA, and Mayor Berger in particular are pulling this together. The great news for me is that I really don't know a lot about this topic, right? It's not my area of expertise, but problem solving is an area of expertise, and pulling people together is the way we do it. And so we are very interested in hearing, Governor and I are very interested in hearing what you learned today and what we need to do next to move the ball down the field. Because having a great conversation is important, but having some to-dos and action items that are going to change the future for the better are equally important, if not more important. So with that, Mayor Berger, please let me know what you learned today.
Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being here today. You just mentioned that you were actually in Lima, and I'm here. So
I was in his town today, and he was here in Columbus. So there we go.
But thank you for immediately calling Director Stevenson and creating a sense of urgency for this, because I do think there are two opportunities here. The one is that with the President's signature in January on the changes to the Clean Water Act, there's an opportunity that Ohio cities, all cities across the country have now to revisit these obligations that we have. And secondly, I think my request to you and to the governor was that the state, by policy, stand with local governments as we all work hard to try to meet these obligations. And I think that that was evident today, certainly in the attendance that we had in the room, the energy that Director Stevenson and Tiffany put into pulling the meeting together. And I think we got to hear from folks who had really impressive stories about the efforts that communities are making in order to address these very serious issues in our community. But I think we ought to hear from others in the room besides myself, but thank you for the urgency that you've given to this issue.
Are there other people who would like to? Lieutenant Governor, you should know that Ohio EPA, it's in the law that they have to reach out to all the communities. Ohio EPA is the first one who has done this in the nation. So they should be applauded. You should be applauded for taking that aggressive step. And we would like to see this in every state, working out and reaching out to their communities. So thank you very much.
First to talk, let's be first to do, too,
yes.
right?
Correct.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Mike Summers, Mayor of Lakewood. Good to see you again. I think we uniformly across our panel affirmed that about 20% of our households, lower income, are in serious trouble for a variety of reasons, but this is piling on in a very significant way, and we're all worried about it, and I'm sure you are too. There's another 20%, so pretty close to 40% that are close to that in terms of these obligations we have, our stewardship, and the cost of that stewardship, and what it means to those households. So we're challenged to not only finance the projects, but we know that we're going to drive disproportionately an enormous amount of stress to these households. We have to figure out how to take that pressure off.
Well, I'd also like to say thank you. I was part of that original conversation, and I know you were listening. Lakewood and Elyria are very similar in terms of our affordability issues. We have a 22% poverty rate, so the rate increases that will be required to meet the ceiling on a federal consent decree will be considerably difficult for folks in our community. So working on that affordability formula is very important, making resources available, but also the whole concept of integrated planning and the flexibility associated with that is so important to communities like Elyria. We have opportunities and challenges. There are opportunities to leverage funds for projects that can create synergy around the requirements that we already have for our projects. And I think that the interpretation at the state level regarding the integrated approach that's being advocated for is going to be very important in terms of how it translates into real action for communities.
And Lieutenant Governor, you might know this already, but I want to point this out. But can everyone from Ohio EPA please raise their hand? Okay. Everyone from Headquarters EPA, please raise your hand. Everyone from Region 5 EPA, raise your hand. So we have everyone from permitting to enforcement to everyone that a community has to deal with when negotiating their consent decrees or administrative orders are in this room. And that's what we've been rolling up our sleeves all day to work on. So, any other questions? Or?
Well, to that point, and I'm not the subject matter expert either, but I think what I learned a lot today, so thank you. It was extremely educational, energizing. And so I would like to keep some momentum in terms of the continued dialogue, but I think to Mayor Berger's earlier point, it's more than just dialogue, it's dialogue to action. So I don't want to put US EPA on the spot, but it would be nice to walk away with a commitment.
You should, because I'm about to if you don't.
I will. I'll take the first step there, but I would like the commitment from US EPA that you will stay at the table with us. And part of what you missed today is there's a little friendly competition between communities on themes. And I didn't really come up with a theme, but I distilled a lot of what I heard down into something that resonates with me is that the success of integrated planning relies on integrated leadership. And by that I mean everybody in this room and many people outside of this room need to stay at the table and engaged in open, candid discussion and the willingness to continue to make good decisions. Decisions that are good for the environment, that are good for our community, and that are good for Ohio. But we can't do it alone. So I'm hopeful we can get a nod from US EPA that they're in it with us and will stay with us for the long haul.
Yeah, because we absolutely need you to be. I think we all largely share the same goals. but we all have to understand each other's abilities. And when you create understanding, you create a pathway forward. And hopefully you did create some understanding with one another today. And so I would be interested to know from our friends at US EPA what you learned from this conversation that perhaps you believe could be helpful as you think about how to help us with this, if you're willing to.
Thank you. No, so I think today was really important for us. I think one of the things that we learned, and we had a fairly good understanding, is that the mayors across the state of Ohio are incredibly energized about this issue. They care deeply. With the passage, as Mayor Berger just talked about, the passage of the legislation that the president signed in January was frankly based on a lot of the work by the state of Ohio and the mayors in Ohio. And so I think to the point that was just made, we're fully committed to continuing this participation. I was here about several months ago with the mayors having this discussion. We're committed to fulfilling all the obligations within that statute. And I think as Mayor Berger said today, the hope is that we will have a few cities signing on for integrated plans. Mayor Berger has 10. I'm at one additional, at least one additional city to sign on. But I think a part of, in addition to what we've learned today, so beyond the fact that the mayors are incredibly interested in this, is that the constituents across the state of Ohio are interested in this. We talked to Kyle, who is a utility leader. We had other utility leaders, the city of Columbus. And I think the ideas are all incredibly innovative. I mean, the thinking that integrated planning is a real path forward for many of these cities, for many of the utilities. I think that came across fairly strong to us today. So if nothing else, I think the main thing from the EPA staff is that the conversation today have reinforced how important this is. And perhaps more importantly, I think quite a few pragmatic approaches, quite a few pragmatic themes have been left with us in terms of opportunities going forward.
Anyone else like to add to that?
Hi, I'm Kyle Dreyfus-Wells. I'm the CEO of the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. So we're the city of Cleveland and 61 other municipalities in Northeast Ohio. And I think just building on Andrew's point, the one thing I want to emphasize for you is that it's going to take some complexity, some rolling our sleeves up and doing some really creative problem solving, which we're seeing from Ohio EPA. The staff there has just been amazing in terms of helping us solve these issues. But I just want to emphasize that integrated planning takes a new look at issues, and it's going to take some hard work and some technical staff to actually get this done. So I just feel the need to emphasize that because it's good governance as we go forward, but it's not necessarily easy. And so I think all of the mayors can talk about the amount of different staff you have to. Well, I mean, so a great example, let me see, it's 4 o'clock and the lieutenant governor just asked me for an example. I think a great example is, for example, in Northeast Ohio, we are trying to come up with an alternative way to get funding to local governments to solve some of their bare bones sewer issues. And so we've had to look at grant making to local governments from the regional sewer district. That's a new thing for us. I'm not sure how many 6119 districts make grants to local governments. Todd at Avon Lake had to work with Jerry Rao to come up with a way to get funding to homeowners to do lateral changes. That is new for utilities. We don't normally do that kind of thing. So that takes time to put that together. It's a different kind of staff to put those agreements together. And that's the kind of creative solutions that we have to bring to bear. So.
I'd also like to point out there's a lot of smaller communities who do not have the sophistication or the staffing to come up with a complicated integrated planning. And so any type of technical assistance that Ohio EPA can work with some of those smaller communities and share best practices would be very helpful.
Okay.
Lieutenant Governor, my name is Todd Danielson with Avon Lake Regional Water, and thank you for your time today. And I would like to follow up with with what Kyle just said, that we, as utilities, very much appreciate the flexibility that Ohio EPA is trying to give to allow us to comply, but also to help with funding solutions. We have had the benefit of some 0% financing, which is really, it saved us $20 million in interest over the next 20 to 30 years, and that's helped make it much more affordable to comply with the regulations that we see. So if the state of Ohio can continue with flexibility and also ways to help with financial assistance, that is incredibly helpful for us as utilities to comply. So thank you.
One thing I would like our friends at the US EPA to know, that we consider water in Ohio a huge asset. And the governor and I are very serious about water quality in everything from what's happening at Lake Erie and some of our inland lakes regarding algae to PFAS in our water system. We're not ignoring in any way the need to have water quality, because we know as a state that in this day and age that water is a great asset. I was involved in the Great Lakes Compact when I was Speaker of the House to help preserve the integrity of the Great Lakes. So we don't want to sacrifice quality, but we do know that when you can, that there are creative ways that with some flexibility and some resources and some collaboration and some technical expertise, that we can do this better. And so I don't want anyone at any moment to think that somehow we want to go back on water quality, because we don't, not at all. But we do want to be flexible at how we solve these problems. Anyone else have anything to offer? It's like a relay.
Well, thank you very much to the state of Ohio for this. And I love the segue into the water quality because, I'm Adrienne Amira with Geosyntec Consultants. I've helped the Mayor's Water Council over the last 12 years on this long journey. But on water quality, integrated planning should be thought of, if I spend this dollar here, am I going to move the needle on improving?
Yeah, it's ROI. It's like you think every dollar you spend, what's my best return on investment?
And one of the big problems and why we had to get this legislation is the Clean Water Act often looks at, we have these unattainable water quality standards with today's technology and affordability. So we need to get in that mode of, hey, over the next 5 years, my community can afford to spend this much, and these are the highest priority projects to spend it on, as opposed to saying, we have to come up with a plan that will get us 100% attainment of every single water quality standard.
Yeah, Fred always wants to say something. She knows me. Fred Andes from Barnes and Thornburg, and I work for a lot of communities on these issues and help draft the integrated planning statute. Thank you for this. This is a great program, and we appreciate your contributions and your presence. One issue, and it's really not only directed to you, but to all the agency folks. One of the things that I think is most valuable and really important here is going to be, we're doing some creative things. We're doing some creative things that are going to be good for both the environment and for the ratepayers. And often with agencies, it's hard to get them to do creative things. Often staff feels they don't have the signals from up above that creative things are allowed or creative things are favored. So it's often a battle to bring in creative ideas and get agencies to accept them. So one of the things that I think we really need here, particularly in this program, because this program encourages people to do creative, great things with their water programs, is for higher level people to send those clear signals down to agency staff that in fact working with communities to do creative things will be favored, will be rewarded, will be encouraged.
Well, I can tell you that I hope my presence here is an indication of that. I can tell you that that as soon as I left Mayor Berger and the mayors that day, I called the governor and I said, hey, this is one of the things that came up. It makes a lot of sense to me. Does it make sense to you? He said, absolutely. I called Lori, and she knows that we are very interested in helping our communities do right by our collective constituents, both on the cost side and the environmental side of this. And one of my jobs is, as Lieutenant Governor, is to run Innovate Ohio. So we like innovation. We like the idea of thinking about how to solve old problems in new ways. And that's what creative thinking is. And regulations, I know, sometimes are not the friendliest tools for thinking creatively, but now we have a new law and a new path forward that gives us a little more freedom, I believe, to think in a more creative manner, and Governor DeWine and I support that happening in Ohio.
Lieutenant Governor. My name is Elena Shockey. I work for the City of Columbus. I just really wanted to reiterate something that Kyle said about these being complex issues. The City of Columbus has very much benefited from the fact that Ohio EPA has staff that have worked in lockstep with us, who understand our integrated plan just as well as we do. There are Ohio EPA members who could probably do my presentation better than I could do my presentation on integrated planning, and I think, just the ask of continuing to invest in staff and in staff development and in long-term planning for staff consistency is really important to us, so that we're able to continue to have those really, really high-level, high-quality conversations with Ohio EPA.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm sure Lori will make sure that we're doing that, right?
Julie, how are we doing? I know we have, I think we need to wrap up.
So what's next? What are we going to do next? What's the takeaway? What's the next step with this?
Team. I mean, my initial thought is we need to reconvene. I think one of my observations today, while this was a great exchange of information and presentation of information, I feel like we could all benefit from more opportunities for just dialogue, brainstorming, idea sharing. So getting together maybe in a different format where we're breaking out into groups where we can have real substantive conversations and share ideas would be something that I would recommend moving forward with probably pretty much this group, but maybe broken down a little bit more.
Yeah, you need some people who are creative thinkers and leaders who are willing to come to the table and invest their time in it, and get back together soon. Don't leave here and then wake up tomorrow and forget about what happened today. You got to get the list together of who wants to really be engaged, who wants to roll up their sleeves, making sure that we have diverse voices in that from different partners in this that are in this room, to make sure that they are putting things together that are actionable.
I know that we can count on the Mayor's Alliance and the mayors and the leadership in this room to hold us to task. I wholeheartedly agree, and maybe the only other thing to add on to that is each of you think about if there was one thing that you could request of anyone else in this room, be it Ohio EPA, US EPA, what is one action item that you would like to see moved forward, and provide that to us? And maybe that will provide the basis for future conversations, for subgroups to develop. But today was extremely informative. We appreciate everyone's time. It came together quickly. I want to acknowledge Tiffany Kavalak before we depart. She heads up our water program. She was really instrumental in pulling this team together, and she is the person in the leadership position that really helps ensure that our team is at the table. So, Tiff, I don't know if you would you like to provide any last minute comments, and then I think we can.
do want to say we're not quite done. We have about another 10 minutes. We want to let Brenna finish her presentation once we're finished with this, please. I will say one of my action items and next steps are that I know there's about 20 communities that we invited here. We're not sure why they weren't able to come, whether it was the date or just the logistics. So one of my action items is to take this material and make sure that they get it and walk them through that and get them engaged, because we're not real sure why attendance wasn't available today. But I want to thank my team, David Immerman, or Birnbaugh. I just want to thank him for all the logistical work that we did. And thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'll let your presentation continue, but I will follow up with Director Stevenson and you, Mayor, and Mayor Berger, and work with our friends at the US EPA on next steps. Let's not waste the opportunity. Let's make the most of it and come up with ways to help our collective constituents lead a higher quality of life, both economically and environmentally. So, thank you.